Y'all, welcome back to another video. The YouTube videos are back. I was in Mexico and obviously on vacation with my family, but now I'm going to be trying to post around 3 a week, and I will be consistent with it, I promise you guys. But today we are going to be diving into one of my favorite topics as a Christian, because it's a controversial one and one that I'm super passionate about, and that is alcohol as Christians. And if you guys have been following me for a while, you guys know that I've been sober for a good bit now. I'm almost 2 years fully sober. I'll be 2 years fully sober on August 2nd, so coming up very soon. And alcohol to me is something that I think all Christians should avoid at all costs. And honestly, all people in general, forget just Christianity, forget just limiting it to just that. I think everyone's lives would be better without alcohol. And even in small doses, even if it's just a glass every now and then, whatever else it is. And I am super passionate about this topic because I think alcohol obviously ruins so many people's lives, and I think it's one of those things that it's a slippery slope of, especially in the Christian field, where it's like, is it okay in moderation? Is it okay? Because a lot of people say, oh, it's just drunkenness and not just drinking. And I have lots of different takes on that. So we are going to dive into all of that today. I'm going to kind of go into detail of how I came to become sober and kind of dive into the reasons why I became sober and why I think you guys should go sober as well. But yeah, without further ado, in high school, I actually didn't drink until my end of my sophomore year of high school. So I was one of those kids that just didn't drink in the beginning of high school. I would still go to the events, but I just wouldn't drink. And I wouldn't touch anything. But then end of my sophomore year, I drank for the first time. And then kind of from there on out, I was kind of drinking until my senior year. And it didn't last long for me because I was able to witness for a lot of people in my life that there was a lot of addiction in my family and everything else. So I was able to witness that and also learn from my older brother's mistakes and everything else and take their advice. But I definitely drank a lot that summer going into junior year. Then junior year, pretty much drinking 2 times every single weekend, getting drunk every single time I drank. There was never a time that I drank that I was just drinking to just enjoy a drink. Every single time I was getting drunk. Then that led into other things, obviously, like vapes, smoking, all that stuff. But alcohol, and that's another thing with alcohol, and I'll actually get into that later. But essentially, I tore my ACL going into, or the end of my junior year, and this was kind of the start of me kind of realizing how the effects of alcohol, and also slowly starting to try to change my ways. And this honestly changed my life and brought me so much closer to Christ. And this was the start of my testimony, I would say, in a lot of ways. But something that I just noticed when I was drinking, obviously I enjoyed it for a long period of time. I was with people and I was having fun. I thought that's what everyone else was doing. And obviously you get that dopamine spike when you do drink, so it's obviously going to be enjoyable in that moment. But obviously the hangovers and all that other stuff, which when you're young you can deal with and it's not as bad, but as you get older, or when you get a certain kind of injury, you start to see the effects of alcohol more in your life, or when you're going through something mentally. And that was the case for me. I tore my ACL and I had a ton of setbacks. I also had a ton of other knee problems going into that. And what I started to notice was when I drank, my knee would be 10 times worse. It would feel way worse and it wasn't healing. And this is kind of the start of me realizing the effects of alcohol. And then also just seeing how people acted around me when they were drinking, how people just completely changed as people, and how they treated me, how they treated the people around them. And just, I was able to, what I used to do when I was in high school, and something that I do still to this day, but I especially did it during that time, was I would always evaluate people. I would always study. I studied, bro, but I would always study people and kind of view, people watch almost, and kind of just we'd be out and I would just kind of study people's behaviors and kind of just try to learn from people's behaviors, kind of study them and kind of see what they're doing that I think is right, what I think their intent behind what they're doing is. And this is what I did as a kid growing up always, especially being a part of a big family. I would kind of just sit and listen and watch and observe. And that was something I did a lot in high school, especially during that phase where I was going through a really dark time. And I was using alcohol as a way to kind of numb myself in a lot of ways as well. I just remember kind of studying and analyzing people during this time. And I would just realize through that evaluation of not only myself, but also other people, that alcohol was just bringing zero value to anyone's life. And that it was just something that would lead them to do things that wasn't them. And I would see people act a certain way when they weren't drinking, and then act a completely different way when they were drinking. And I just didn't like that. And obviously, as I started to go through more pain, I had two choices, and that my choices were to either dive deep into that sinful lifestyle or to dive out of it. And luckily, I chose to, by the grace of God, I chose to move away from it. I chose to take the harder path, which was to slowly avoid those environments and those places that I knew were toxic. And as I did that, that's when I would observe people, because I was started to be the one not drinking and driving people. I became like the driver my senior year, and I would be drinking. It slowly started to stop throughout my senior year, but all junior year I was drinking every single weekend. Then senior year I was drinking pretty much every weekend until the spring semester. I slowly started to stop because I was just in such a dark place. And I was just evaluating people, and I was realizing how much harm that it does to people in their lives. And I was seeing how much damage it did to my life as well. And this is something that once I got on my path to my faith, and once I used those difficulties to try to make me a better person. And what changed for me was I was like, I want to become the best possible human I can possibly be. And when I evaluated all the things in my life, I wanted to not do any of the things that I felt like were pulling me away from that person that I thought was the best version of myself. And I started to really grow in my faith, and I was like, okay, what represents Christ in the best way, and what's going to bring me closest to Christ? What is going to make me the man that God created me to be? And when I started to evaluate that, I realized that alcohol in any amounts does not bring me closer to that person. If anything, it pulls me way farther from that person. And there's a lot of reasons why that is. And this is what I found from just observing people and from my own personal testimony of alcohol in general, is I found that, first of all, alcohol doesn't make you better in any single way. Alcohol often, when it's present, is in environments that are very toxic and with toxic people, and are environments that don't breed positivity, that don't breed or make you a better person or bring you closer to God at all. It's usually clubs, bars, whatever else it is. And so when I evaluated that, it was very hard to defend alcohol, because I just saw that nothing good came from it. I saw that it didn't make me a better man in any way. And I think all of us deep down know that alcohol is just not it, and that in any amounts it's just not good for us and not something that we should do. But we try to defend it. We try to, because it's difficult. It's difficult not to do, especially when everyone else around us is doing it and it's so normalized in our society today. But I would just really ask that question to yourself. Like, I think we all, and I think what God wants us to do is to strive to be the best possible people we can be. And that's ultimately how we're going to become the person that God created us to be, is by striving to be our best selves in all aspects of our life. And alcohol does not bring you closer to that. It brings you so far away from that. Not only health-wise, because it's literally a poison, but also emotionally and spiritually. And it's just going to separate you from God. And also when it comes to temptation, we're called to run away as far as possible from our sin, not to get as close to sin as possible to the point where we don't do it, but like we're not trying to get as close to the line as possible. And when it comes to drinking, you are putting yourself in that tempting environment. You're putting yourself in a situation where you could be led to sin. When you drink a little bit, and at least for me, like whenever I drank, there was no, I was gonna get drunk. Like that was my problem, was like when I drank, I got drunk. There was no in between for me. And I think that's what it is for a lot of people. And I think when we drink, we're just leading ourselves and tempting ourselves. Just like when you think of waiting till marriage, you don't want to sleep in the same bed as your partner because it's tempting. You're going to be tempted to fall into temptation. The same thing with alcohol, and the same way I view that is if you're having drinks, you're going to be tempted to go farther and sin and fall into drunkenness or whatever else it is. So I just would challenge you guys, and I think the way that I live my life and the way that I think we all should live our lives and the way that I think God calls us to live our life is to be the best possible men and women that we can possibly be for ourselves, for God, and for our families, and for our future families. And I want you guys to ask yourself, does drinking alcohol in any amounts bring you closer to that person? And another massive thing and the answer is no, honestly. I'm sorry, the answer is no to that question. And I think that alone should be enough motivation to not drink. And the reason why I go fully sober is because there's zero temptation. There's no temptation. Same thing the way I view diet, the 80-20 rule. It's better to be all in because it's not even an option. There's no temptation. You know, this is what I stand for, this is what I believe, and so there's no compromising on that. So it just makes it easier to not give in. But that's just something that I would challenge you guys on, is just to really ask yourself those questions. And I think that all of our lives would be better without alcohol. And I think that our society and our world today would be a lot better of a place if we didn't have alcohol in it. And I think something that we want to think about is we're called as Christians to be set apart. And I think be set apart as much as we possibly can. And there's lots of ways that we can do that. We can do that in how modest we dress. We can do that in how kind we are, how loving we are. But I also think we can do that in our actions. I think someone that is sober, fully sober, and preaches that, I think is representing Christ in a better light than someone who still drinks and still does those things. And that's not to say one person is better than the other. It's just to say, like, you are representing Christ in a better light by doing that. And people would be like, wow, okay, that's like shows his faith is deep, or her faith is deep. And I think that's an underrated thing when it comes to being sober, is that I feel like you can represent Christ in a better way, and you're set apart from the world more when you are sober, which represents Christianity and can bring people to Christ in a lot deeper way, because he shows the roots of your faith. But yeah, that's my take on alcohol. And let me know what you guys think down below. And overall, I'm just going to say, I think everyone's life would be better without alcohol in it. And I think if you're on the fence about drinking, I think you should go cold turkey. You should go all in on being sober. And I think it was the best decision I've ever made in my life, and I know it will be for you as well. But yeah, if you made it to the end of this video, give a thumbs. No. Let's do a penguin emoji. I hope there's a penguin emoji. Do a penguin emoji in the comments to let me know that you don't have a trash attention span and that you made it to the end of this video. If you guys want to support Generational Revival, you can sign up for the free giveaway or join the free community. We're having live calls around 5 days a week. It's completely free. I hope to see you guys in those calls. If you want to download the Upspace app to transform your health and to support bringing health back to our world, or get some happy beer or cacao, whatever it is. But I appreciate all of you. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, do all that good stuff, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.